Okay, so we continue the Halachos, and essentially yesterday we talked about how long the tkiyas are, making the brachas. We covered that, standing, and we talked about what kind of shofar. We talked about coming to the conclusion how we get to 30 kolos, right? Because the center part is the mitzvah of trua, and the Torah says that each trua has to have a tkiyah before and after, and there's 3 different types of truas. And essentially, there is right. So that's one version of the trua of the Torah. Either trua is the trua, or trua is a shvarim, or trua is a shvarim and a trua. And each tkiyah has to be the length of whatever the size, the minimum size of the trua inside. Which means that's correct. Which means your shever, your singular shever, has to be less than the tkiyah of that set. And best should be smaller than the tkiyah of another set also, right? Because the tkiyah in a tashrat is longer than the tkiyah of the other ones, right? Because the tkiyah in the minimum size tkiyah for tashrat has to be as long as shvarim and trua, right? So your shever in your tashrat could be as long as a little bit less than the tkiyah of that set, but that would make it longer than the tkiyah of the next set, because the tkiyah of the next set is only the size of shvarim. Sorry. So look at the last page there. Right? Okay, where the lines are. Okay, so the column on the right where it says tashrat, yeah? The last page, mamish the last page, the diagram. So the tkiyah on the right side, there's a light long line, that's a tkiyah. Okay, now there's 3 shvarim on there. Each one of those can in theory be a little bit less than the line right above it. Because then it's not a tkiyah yet, right? But if you went that long, it would be longer than the tkiyah of the next het where it says tashat. So even though within this set it's smaller than a tkiyah and therefore it counts as a shever, but because it's longer than the tkiyah of the next set, it's longer than the tkiyah of the tashat, it doesn't look good. But still you're yotze technically. Followed? You're yotze because it's smaller than the tkiyah of this set. But you shouldn't do it because it looks like longer than the tkiyah of the next set. You following?
So what should you do? Basically blow a normal shvarim.
Right. Exactly. Now the point is, if you went too long, you can keep it as a tkiyah, you can keep it as a shever and not say you messed up.
I keep it always the same,
because it's
always the same.
But if you happen to have gone long
On which one?
on your shever
On the shvarim.
of tashrat, so long as it's not as long as the tkiyah of that set, you're yotze, you can keep on going.
It's too long, then you have to make
If it's longer than the tkiyah of your set, then you have to go back again because now you turned it into tkiyah.
Does it always have to be a line like this to be exit? Let's say in the first case,
Yeah.
the tkiyah has to match the
Size of the shvarim and trua, yeah.
to be exit.
To be exit, yeah. There's other opinions, but it has to be as long as it has to be long.
It could be longer.
It could be longer. It has to be at least as long as your shvarim and trua of that set. The tkiyah has to be as long as the shvarim and trua of that case, of that set.
So the shvarim and trua, let's say in Tashat,
Yeah.
that extends longer than the tkiyah. It's not.
That's fine. In other words,
That extends
if you
longer.
made it, look, if you added more truas, which made it longer, it's fine.
But the tkiyah has
As long as your tkiyah, okay, what's the minimum size for how much you have to blow of tkiyah? 18 bursts. Because in that set, that's the size of the trua. Even though you may have made the trua longer because you made the shever a little longer, or you added more bursts to your trua, right? But because it was the size of the minimum, the middle of that set for that thing, then it's a kosher tkiyah because it had 18 bursts. It was the length of 18 bursts.
Yeah, but if you made it longer, the tkiyah has to be longer.
No, it doesn't seem like that. It doesn't seem like that. It has to be as long as the tkiyah is supposed to be in that set. Even if you decide to make it longer. That's what it seems to me.
No, I thought the other way around.
I don't.
Then you have to go back.
It doesn't seem like that to me.
It is based on like your trua.
Yeah, so if your trua is tiny, then it makes your whole set tinier. L'chora. But still, you have to have a stickle trua. You have to have something. Your trua has to be a sound. Yeah.
You're talking about breaths in between.
Yeah, we can get there today. Today we're doing the breaths. Okay, so we're on the page 5, which is hefsek neshima. See it, hefsek neshima on the right side. Okay. Hayuvavis shel truas, the bursts of the trua. Likewise, the 3 shvarim. Shehem b'makim trua, which they are the trua of that set. Right. So whatever trua is of that set, right? The Torah says to make a trua, and we're not sure what the trua is. Is the trua yavava, which is the trua that we have, or is the trua the 3 shvarim? But either way, whatever your trua is in that set, that trua has to be done in one set, in one breath. So in Tashrat, you have to do the truas and the shvarim in one breath, at least according to this opinion. We'll see another one soon. So according to this opinion, the middle, whatever it is, either it's 3 shvarim or it's 9 truas, or it's 3 shvarim and 9 truas, all have to be in one breath.
That's the first one is harder one. You do it together.
Correct. That's right. So the Tashrat one is hardest. Now, if he didn't do it in one breath, he didn't fulfill his obligation. Torah says to do one trua, one blasting. Trua and not turn it into 2 blasts, which you do when you take a breath. Okay. But let's see 1 second. No, sorry. Here he's talking about just the trua and shvarim. We'll see the other opinion soon. Now, but tashleisha shvarim, the 3 shvarim, the trua and the trua of tashrat. Even though both of them combined and makam trua achas hamor b'Torah is really one trua of the Torah. Because maybe when the Torah says trua, it means moaning and wailing and weeping at one after the other. Unless it doesn't have to be done in one breath. Because it isn't the way of people who are crying to moan and weep in the same breath. They usually take a breath between the two. People usually stop between them with breath.
Is the same opinion?
This is all opinion 101 number 1. This is all opinion number 1. I'm sorry. The first paragraph was talking about just tarat and tashat, not tashrat. I misread. Sorry. I know I misread. I'm sorry. We're talking about one opinion. Tashat and tarat for sure. The shvarim have to be in one breath, and the trua also be one breath. Now he's talking about tashrat, the shvarim and trua, even though it's be'etzem just one trua, because people usually take a breath. This opinion is take a breath. Okay. Therefore, and therefore, even the one blowing should not just he may. He should take a breath because that's the way people do it. Sorry, this is actually the opinion we're going to. Sorry, yes, you have to, and this is going to be the opinion we follow. But as we're going to see, because there's another opinion, if you didn't take the breath, you're still yotzes. We'll see. If you didn't take the breath, you're still yotzes. We'll see. You should not stop more than what it takes to take one breath. But you should still wait. Sorry, you shouldn't wait for the guy to say the word trua. You should do your trua right itself. After the shvarim, take after you made a breath. Okay, so if you're ever in an Ashkenazi shul, the guy announces tekiya, and then the guy blows tekiya. And then the announcer says shvarim terua, and then the guy does both. In other words, don't wait for shvarim and then trua and then tekiya. But we don't do that anyway. But in Ashkenazi shuls, that's what they've done. I've once a chazan in one of these Ashkenazi shuls, and that's what they do. Tekiya, blow. Right. That's right. So he says both shvarim and trua. But he's saying now, even though you're taking a breath between shvarim and terua and tashrat, don't wait for the guy to announce terua. Okay. 1 second. Here someone announces it?
I never heard any.
No. In Chabad the Gabbai points. Chabad the Gabbai points. But in Ashkenazi shuls, maybe I don't know what they do in Sephardi shuls. Definitely in Ashkenazi shuls, there's a Gabbai who announces it. Oh yeah. Okay, so that's one opinion. So one opinion is you have to take a breath between the shvarim and trua of tashrat because that's the way people cry. And the Yeshem and others say even though most people do not wail and moan in one breath, but nonetheless, considering the fact that the reason why we do shvarim and trua together, out of doubt, perhaps this is what the Torah means when it says the word trua, more of a Torah. In case if so, we should not make a interruption and don't take a breath. Because Torah says one trua, but let me second truas and don't make 2 truas. So it's exactly the opposite. Therefore, if you did in 2 breaths, you didn't fulfill your obligation. You should do it in 1 breath. Nonetheless, you should take a break in the middle. So this is much harder. You take a break without taking a breath between the shvarim and trua. You have to hold your breath even longer because you're taking a break. That's right. But says that the Rebbe, the minig in our countries is to follow the first opinion. And where's the book I had here yesterday? I had the Sefer, under there. The Sefer, this one. Halacha, which is a book of just synopsis of halachos that you need when you're on Mitzvah, written by Rabbi Pastritsky, and he just straight up only quotes the first opinion. Just to say, he just says take a breath. That's all he says. Doesn't even say two opinions. If yes, just says take a breath between them. All Mitzvahim. It's 2 volumes. The first is the 10 Mitzvahim, and the second volume is Mitzvahim for Yom Mitzvahim. It's a good volume. I use it quite a bit.
What, anything while
Yeah.
you're
Here he just quotes the
That's like everything.
easy, leading Halachos.
Just the halachas.
just halachas, and then he bring also the history of the Mitzvahim, the reasons for the Mitzvahim. It's like a whole fabrengen about the Mitzvahim, including halachas. Then he quotes like minus from the Rebbe, chuvas from the Rebbe about the various different Mitzvahim. It's a good book. Okay, Mitzvahim Kol Chasim. That's what it's called. 2 volumes. All right, the minig in our country says out the Rebbe, as far as Shen, it's like the first opinion. The English Shen is minig but don't change the minig because of an over dispute. In other words, if you come to a place where the minig is not to take a breath, then let them not take a breath. But our opinion, our minig is we do take a breath between Shvarim and Tua. Av makom she'ein minig kavua, but if there's no minig, then the tkiyas miyoshav literally means the sitting tkiyas, which we are standing by, but it means the main tkiyas shofar done after Kriyas Torah, because then people aren't obligated to stand, as opposed to the tkiyas done during Shemona Esrei, which is called tkiyas mu'min, because everybody has to stand. Okay, so if there's no minig, says the Alter Rebbe, then by the first tkiyas, the main tkiyas after Kriyas Torah, you should do in one breath without taking the breath. So that the bracha should be according to all opinions. See this? Because even according to the first opinion, which said you should take a breath. Yesh Omer, those that say that if you did it in one breath, yotze, you fulfilled. Like the person blowing in tarat and tashat, which is yotze, as we shall explain. Okay, so that means the bottom line is, that's why I said it, because it's other opinions. If you didn't take a breath, you're still yotze. It seems from Alter Rebbe you should take the breath between. In other words, we're not doing Mu'ammad and Miyoshev. We're only doing one. And the Alter Rebbe said minig in our place is Keswar Rishon, which is to take a breath. But nonetheless, he gives like the option that if you did it the other way, you're still yotze, which is why he said that the first time you do it in shul, you shouldn't take a breath. Right? So maybe that means we shouldn't take a breath, and that way you're yotze according to both opinions, because according to the other opinion, maybe.
Especially because for people who
Yeah. Then maybe you shouldn't take a breath, because that way you only yotze half of the first opinion. Because according to the first opinion, there's only some people who say that if you don't take a breath, you're yotze. It would seem to me that we'd go with this, what Alter Rebbe says is minimum dinis elu. And he only quotes that. That's why I'm going with that, because he only quotes that. Right? In shul, when the chazan does it, then the chazan doesn't take a breath when he's doing it after Kriyas Torah, which is called tkiyas miyoshev. But tkiyas mu'ammad, as he's going to say in a second, he doesn't too. Then he does take a breath between. To be yotze both opinions. So I'm saying on Mitzvahim, I don't know. Over here, this Rabbi Bashitsky here just quotes the first opinion, which says to do it in one, to do it in two.
take a breath.
Yeah. He says to do one neshima. He says to do it in 2 breaths. He says to take a breath in between. Just quotes that first opinion. Maybe bring something here. Sorry?
This is said
That's what I'm saying. To L'chora, it seems like. Sorry?
Here it says.
Many didn't say, let's take a breath.
No, but we do take a breath.
L'chora, yeah. Anyway, so he's saying if you have no minig, then do the first one without a breath. But when it comes to tkiyas during Shemona Esrei, which is called the standing tkiyas, which don't make a bracha on the Yasser, you do that in 2 breaths. In order to fulfill yourself, and according to the opinion which says that according to the first opinion, if you don't take a breath, you're not yotze. And that way, at least in the standing tkiyas, you're taking the breath. Okay. Okay, now Hatakeya, Tarat, Tashat, Nishim Achas. If someone does Tarat and Tashat in one breath, means Tkiyas through us, everything in one breath. If you took a small break in between them, so the point that it's separated between three, Yotze fulfilled the obligation. Others say he hasn't fulfilled the obligation. And he has to do all three sounds again, meaning Tkiya Trua get Tkiya Trua Tkiya or Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya again. Shatkiya Rishona, because the first Tkiya Lo Hayallah Hefsek never ended. V'soif he had no end and break. Fatkiya Achrona, and the last Tkiya Lo Hayallah Reish V'Aschala didn't have a beginning. She'asak al b'nishim achas, because he did everything in one breath. Now, even though the main opinion is like the first opinion, which means, technically speaking, you'd be yotzeh. Nonetheless, we should follow the latter opinion. You should go back and do all three. This is important to know. So make sure you take your breath between. In other words, basically, the sum total is take a breath between every single set. Between after every tkiya, after every trua, after every shvarim. Because we're following the first opinion, doing tashrat, taking a breath between shvarim and trua. So you take a breath between every single thing.
Not every set. After tkiya, take a breath.
Yes, but not between your three shvarim. Meaning after each, not after each set, but after each item. After each item, take a breath. After every tkiya, after every shvarim, and after every trua. Take a very small breath. Okay. This is what I mentioned yesterday. Even though the person shouldn't speak from the beginning when they heard the brachas the first time in shul until the end of Shemona Esrei when he hears the last tkiyas at the end of Chazar Sashatz. It's going to be explained in later simon. Nonetheless, if the person blowing the shofar spoke, even if he spent many hours chatting, even between a tkiya and a trua, or between trua and tkiya, or between one set and the other. You don't have to go back and blow again. You can hear the shofar staggered all day. It's interesting to know what's on. It happens. The guy stops in the middle of your tkiyas and has a conversation. So you can wait. Wait for him to be finished and continue. Because there's no reason, you don't have to hear it all at once. You can hear it staggered even with talking in the middle. Even though, of course, you're not supposed to, but you're still yotze. Okay, likewise, the listener, if you heard the tkiyas staggered, that is to say, he stopped in between with lots of conversation, yotze fulfilled his obligation. And it happens, especially if you go into a hospital in the middle of your tkiyas, the doctor walks in, you got to take a break for a little bit before until the nurse does whatever she's doing. Happens. Okay, now when it comes to making a mistake. So the sum total of the halachos here are, don't worry about talking, take a break, and make sure you take a breath after every item you sound. Well, we've got the different opinions there. Okay, now we come to making a mistake. Now, making a mistake, as I mentioned yesterday, comes back to understanding the way the Torah set it up. The Torah says 3 truos, and we have the Shulchan that says tkiya before and after every trua. And the bottom line is of the need to repeat yourself. If you made a mistake, is do we consider what you did a interruption between your tkiya and a trua? And the question is going to be, what is what you did part of the item or not part of that set? If it's not part of the set, then it's an interruption. If it is part of the set, then it's not an interruption. That's the svara. Sorry? In between, between two tkiyas? Between two tkiyas is nothing. It's nothing. You go back, you just continue doing the next tkiya. Right? The problem is making a break between the Torah trua and the Torah tkiya before or after. So in each step, the Torah trua is different. It's either shvar and trua or just, sorry? With talking. With talking. But this is interruption of the wrong blasts. That's right. That's what we can talk about now. So let's see. The person blowing is middle of tashrat. After doing 2 shvarim, before he concluded his third shever, right? So he's in the middle of the first half of his trua of that set, the Torah's trua of that set. He started doing truas. Right?
So 2
shvarim, and started doing truas. Instead of doing 3 shvarim. Sorry? No, he's in the middle of tashrat. He's in the first set. So he did tkiya, he did 2 shvarim, and started doing truas instead of doing a 3rd shvarim. Yeah. That's right. So bein shegamar sa trua shehischel b'tos, whether he finished the trua, okay, so he finished 9 truas, the toes. Bein shalon grama, whether he didn't finish the truas, adayin ella adayin yet. Ella niska bem remembered. Yachzev yitka gimel shvarim. He can go back and do 3 shvarim, and doesn't have to do the tkiya over again, right? So he can go back to do the 3 shvarim, the yardia do the 9 shvarim, the yigmar mishom ve'elach and continue going on in order. He doesn't have to go back to do the tkiya of that set. Because he made the tkiya before he made the mistake. And there was no interruption between his tkiya and his shvarim, because he went from tkiya to shvarim. The problem was that after his shvarim, he started doing tkiya too quickly. Right? Now, even though he made an interruption with 2 shvarim, the trua and a trua. Should talk about which is by mistake. Bein tkiya is shown between the first tkiya. Shall bavazu of this set. L'shvarim v'trua shall bavazu of the shvarim and trua, which he later did by correction in this set. In bekach no problem. You following? So he did tkiya, 2 shvarim, and did 9 truas. He realized he only did 2 shvarim. So he goes back and does 3 shvarim and 9 truas. So what's the tkiya before these 3 shvarim and 9 truas? The tkiya he did before the mistake. So l'chora that's a hefsek though. L'chora those 2 shvarim and 9 truas were a hefsek. He says no problem. Why? The kivin shvarim trua should talk about toes him ain shvarim trua sheyesh l'tkir b'vazu, because that what he did, which is shvarim and trua by mistake, is the same type of that set. Ain ze hefsek is not an interruption. That's what I meant to say before. If the mistake you're making is the item of that set, then it's not considered a mistake. It's not considered interruption. And if you don't have to go do tkiya again, all I have to do is just redo that middle part. Just redo the trua of that set, which in this case is shvarim and trua combined.
I wonder what the silent in Torah, you're doing trua.
Yeah.
If you do a trua, what do you mean?
He did in
Instead of another tkiya.
so 1 second. In tarat or tashat? Where is tashat? Where is he?
In Torah or tashat.
So he's in tarat and tashat, yeah. And instead of doing shvarim, he did trua. So now we introduced
That's not from the set.
then it's interruption. And then he has to go do the tkiya again, as we'll see. But now he's talking about in tashrat. Because he did it in tashrat, the mistake was that he had some shvarim and truas where he wasn't supposed to. But those shvarim and truas that he wasn't supposed to isn't the hefsek, because it's the same class of trua of that set.
One Torah, tashat, one Torah, you do something random, it's not belonging.
Something like that. As we're going to see that, yes.
Let's say in touch Rashi did the other did true and then Shabbat.
In where?
First long set.
If he did tarat before,
Yeah.
No, he did.
No, not the big
Trua
set.
before
in
Shabbat.
tashrat, he did teruah before shvarim.
Yeah, he didn't bring up that.
Doesn't bring it up, but l'chora the same thing applies. Because the teruah is part of that set. If you just do it again in the right order. L'chora. Doesn't say so clearly, but so it seems. Let's see as you explain it.
So
Yeah?
let's say you don't remember that, and you go back and do it again. So you have to-
I would say yes. I would say yes. I would say yes. Because you restarted. The question is if you have to. He explains, this is, he compares to somebody who begins to do a trua, and doesn't go well. He goes back to doing trua again. The little sound he made is not a problem. It's not a mistake. Between the trua and the tkiya, the straight sound he did before. Because it's part of the one he's trying to do. So it's as if you started doing it, it wasn't going out well, you did it again. It's not considered a hefsek because it's part of what you're doing. And that's why I'm saying that l'chor, if you did trua out of order, it would be the same svara would apply. If in tashrat, he accidentally did trua before shvarim, l'chor, the same svara applies. All I have to do is redo the shvarim and trua without going back to the tkiya.
I heard by the way, he's doing it the right way, he just messed up. The other way I'm saying he did the other. But anyways, it's fit in there.
Okay. There's gonna be more details to this. Let's see. It's a lot of details to remember. It's a lot. But that's why I'm giving the svara. The svara is, so long as the mistake you did is maintain the trua of that set, then it's okay. There's going to be a little caveat, but we'll see. Yeah. That's why I'm saying, bring the paper with you. Go with the chavrusa. Saying, so if someone knows how to do shofar, should go with someone who can't do shofar, but wants to be part of Mitzvah. And the other guy will be your makri. He'll point to the things and you won't make a mistake. It's the best thing to do. If you're going yourself, at least hold it in front of you and push it to follow. It's easier than doing by memory. Okay, let's conclude here. The medvar, all this is true. We say the tashrat, when you're doing tashrat, where shvarim trua is all part of the same set, and therefore doesn't consider it. It's all the trua of that set. It's the same class of trua, and therefore doesn't consider it hefsek. Maybe say that's tashat, but if he's in the middle of tashat and tkiya, shvarim, tkiya, whether he started doing trua by mistake after the shvarim, whether he started doing trua by mistake in the middle of the shvarim, even if he only made one shever, whether he started doing trua before he started doing anything, even one shever, meaning he did trua instead of shvarim. So he has to go back and do it tkiya. Given the trua zu enim ein hashvarim shesarach liyas l'tkei because the trua he's now introducing is not of the same kind of trua of this set, because in this set the trua is supposed to be a shvarim. Right? If it's considered an interruption, if it's considered an interruption between the shvarim that you're supposed to be doing and the tkiya you did before. Now, afilu b'sei tashrat, going back to tashrat now. He's in tkiya shvarim trua tkiya is in tashrat. Amru she'ein sarach l'tkei tkiya shayna. When we said that if you accidentally introduced truas too early, or you introduced truas in the wrong way, you don't have to go back to do its key again because all of your truas are in the same class of the trua of that set. This is only true. That's only if he didn't take a breath between the shvarim and the trua that he did by mistake. He didn't take a breath between the shvarim and the trua that he did by mistake. So he did 2 shvarim, no breath, and started doing 9 truas. No.
That's if you didn't take a breath.
If you didn't take a breath. Oh, because then it was like you're making a mistake. But if you made a mistake, then it's a problem. If you took a breath, it's a problem. And maybe your case applies here. Let's see. Oh, but he didn't because he made a mistake, right? He did 2 shvarim and went straight to truas without taking a breath. So then that trua is like a mistake in shever, and you go back again, do the shvarim and trua again. Okay?
Yeah, but it shouldn't be good to begin with because you're supposed to take a breath.
According to the other opinion, you don't have to, right? Okay. But if you took a breath, so you take 2 shvarim, took a breath, and then start doing truas. So he has to go back and do tkiya again. Why? Because he took a breath, between the shvarim and the trua, you can't consider them as one big inyan. The trua doesn't become part of the shvarim. This is your case. I'm sorry, I was wrong. Someone did a trua alone, without doing shvarim first. He did tkiya and then trua. He's in tashrat, like you were saying. I was wrong. He did the trua before the shvarim. So we have to go back to tkiya. Because he made a mistake because he made a break between in the trua. Between the shvarim, which is the trua of that set, or the beginning of the trua of that set, and the tkiya which comes before it. Let's explain like this. The svara for why someone does 2 shvarim and then he starts doing trua. The reason why he doesn't have to go back to do a tkiya again is because it's as if he made a mistake in the 3rd shever and he's correcting himself, right? But if he took a breath, then he made a break. So it's not as if he's trying to correct his last shever. He's doing a whole new trua, and therefore he has to start again from the first tkiya. And the same thing would happen if a person does tkiya and then does truas without doing shvarim. Right? So in that case, what's he correcting in his truas? In this mistaken trua, what's he correcting? He ruined the flow. If he started with shvarim and then he made a mistake to go to truas, then we say that those truas were like him trying to correct himself, and we can do it again.
And this way they did 3 truas. He did trua first. So what is it?
So he wasn't correcting himself in anything. He just did the wrong thing. That's making a break between what's going to follow, which is a shvarim, and the tkiya before it. You'd always have to go back, yeah. If you're it's right.
You're making a mistake or how you're making a mistake, you pretty much always go back.
If you're always taking a breath, because you're taking the breath between shvarim and trua, even in tashrat, then if you made a mistake and you did 2 shvarim and you did trua after all the you took a breath, if that's the case, you go back to the beginning of the tkiya. That's true. Yeah. Instead of always go back to the beginning of the tkiya. That makes sense, yeah? That simplifies it.
I mean, the question will be, and he hasn't answered that. But what if you push about it and a shot, and they go in your third tkiya?
You have to go back again to the beginning of that. Yeah. Okay, well, yeah. So let's see. So if he did from tkiya directly into trua without doing shvarim first, then that trua is not part of the mistaken true of that set, which is supposed to be shvarim at the beginning. Even though it's still part of the trua of that set, but that's supposed to come after the shvarim. Doesn't help us. Because he didn't do the shvarim yet.
He has to do it with
Never has to go to ski again. Yes. So at this point, it would seem like Adam is right, that because you're taking a breath between shvarim and trua, anytime you make a mistake, you basically go back to the beginning of tkiya. Because you're always taking a breath between shvarim and trua.
And all the cases you didn't take the breath,
Then you'd have to go back. Then you don't have to go back to tkiya. That's right. It's one case. One. It's a good point. Very good. Simplifies it. Okay, final halacha here. If he already did 3 shvarim, ben b'sed tashrat, whether he's in tashrat, ben b'sed tashat, whether he's in tashat, hefsik b'neshima, he took a breath, and instead of continuing to tkiya in tashat or continuing to trua in tashrat, he took a shvarim acherim, did shvarim again. Even if he only did 1 shever. And likewise, after he finished trua, which is 3 bursts, according to one opinion mentioned before, right? The other opinion was it has to be 9 bursts, but the first opinion was it has to be only 3 bursts. And then Hifsik ben Hashim, he took a breath. And he continued to do truas. Even if he didn't finish the trua, he only did 6. We only did 2. So he has to go back to the tkiya before, because those extra truas are interruption, because he took a breath. Of this set, the continues going in order. Because he added extra shvarim, or extra truas, bein hashvarim, between the shvarim, or between the trua and the tkiya shalacharayim, which follows it. And therefore, if you were to go back, not to the tkiya, but just to the shvarim of the trua of that set, and the extra shvarim, the extra trua that he did, it would end up retroactively becoming an interruption between the new set of shvarim, which he's correcting himself, and the tkiya that came before it. Okay, so let's see. He did tkiya, and then he did 3 shvarim, and then and then he took a breath and started doing more shvarim, right? So he can't do the next tkiya, because if he does the next tkiya, that's a break between the tkiya and the 3 shvarim he did before, because there's an extra shever stuck in the middle with a breath, right? Now, what if he just goes back and does 3 shvarim, and then there's no break? Let's go. He did tkiya, 3 shvarim, breath, and then another shever. Okay, so what does he do now? Hypothetically, if he did the next tkiya, then that extra shever is a break between the tkiya that follows and the 3 shvarim he did earlier, right? But if now he already did 1 tkiya, 3 shvarim, and 1 shever, he wants to correct himself. So let's say correct himself not by going back to the tkiya, but just by going back to the 3 shvarim, which would mean he did tkiya, 3 shvarim, 1 shever, 3 shvarim, and then tkiya. So there's no break between the last 3 shvarim and the tkiya, but there's a break between those 3 shvarim and the tkiyas before it. Follow?
Back to begin with. That's all.
That's why
It's
complicated to try and
understand this all.
No, also
It still remains to go back to the beginning, to go back to do tkiya again. That's what I said yesterday. Unless you know how to do the Rebbe's tkiyas, don't do it. Again, first of all, it's 2 things. First of all, it's the extra 2 at the end. And also, the real thing is 2, 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. And if you don't know how to do it, that's the ikr. If you can, then, especially if you make a breath. If you don't take a breath and you add shvarim, it's not a problem. You mentioned that before. But if you take a breath and you add shvarim, then it becomes a hefsek between your shvarim and your trua and your next tkiya. Sorry?
You mean if you add trua?
Or if you add anything. If you take a breath and you add, if you take a breath and you add those little 2 2s after a breath, and that's like 2 truas that you did after a breath, then that trua becomes a hefsek between your shvarim and your tkiya comes after.
What is those little sounds?
Why the Rebbe used to do it? I don't know why the Rebbe did it like that, but that's the Rebbe used to do it. You look in Moonshine's book, he writes the diukim of how the Rebbe Shabbos used to do it. The Rebbe used to do it 2 2 2 2 2 2, and the Rebbe Shabbos used to go 2 2 2 2 2. The middle one is different, the Pesazai, something like that. Pesazah thing.
It's like 1 1 and then 2.
No, it's 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. Something like that. I can't do it with the chef, but that's how the sound is.
I always have that 1 1 and then 2 2.
There's more. Because it starts off 2 2 2 2 2 2 2. So you don't count from the u, you count from the 2 that comes before it. That's what I'm saying. It's very hard to do the Rebbe. It's very hard unless you know how to do the Rebbe's thing. My fellow does it quite well, but it's very hard to do it. And if you don't do it, if you don't know how to do it, just stick to what the Shulchan Aruch says. Two. Just stick to what it says. So everybody's yotzeh. Sorry?
Two.
So you can add that, but don't take a breath. If you take a breath between that, then you run into the problem right here.
Between any of them, you take a breath.
Right. But he's explaining here now why. Just sum up what he's saying here. He's explaining here now why, if after Shvarim or after Trua you added anything, either a Shvarim or a Trua, you have to go back to the Tkiyah before. You can't just go back to the Shvarim, because if you do that, you're retroactive and making a break between the new Shvarim and the first Tkiyah. Right? That's what he's basically saying.
Having trouble, let's say, getting a sound. We spoke about that briefly, having trouble getting a sound. It's not an interruption. Until,
Yeah, if you're having trouble getting the sound, it's not an interruption.
until someone takes a breath.
No.
So let's say in Shvarim, you can't get the Shvarim.
You think about the third Shever?
In the middle of Shvarim, the first one is good, second one is not good. After a few tries, you need to take a breath. Now you need to start over in Tkiyah or what?
Yeah.
The wife from
No, I don't. No, I actually no.
same piece.
No, I don't think you have to go back. It's only if you did 3 shlemim. Wait 1 second. Or if I took a. No, well, let's see. Well, let's see. Let's see. A good question. So he said here, no, I think Yankee's right. It's considered a correction. You don't have to go back to the Tkiyah again.
Because maybe it's me.
No. If you already did Shvarim, then the problem becomes, because you already did Shvarim, now you start doing new things, now you're separating between your Shvarim and your Tkiyah. But if you never did Shvarim to begin with, you're just trying to struggle to get it out, it's not a problem. That's what you mentioned before, that if I did 2 Shvarim and then 9 Truas by mistake, without taking a breath, I can go back after taking the breath and do 3 Shvarim again and 9 Truas. No problem, because I was just correcting myself. You're right. No, it's only after you did 3 full Shvarim where you're expected to do a Tkiyah, and then you start introducing other things, then it becomes a problem because you're making a hefsek between your Shvarim and Tkiyah. Following? Yeah. Like he says here, it's not me'ain of that set because you don't need anything else because you already did the whole thing. Which means if you didn't do the whole thing, you just did 2. You did 2 Shvarim, and now you're correcting. Yeah. No, but that's over here in these cases. Because he doesn't need anything else because you already did 3 Shvarim. And then he starts doing 2 Shvarim again, or starts doing Truas, now he's making a break. But if you didn't finish the 2 Shvarim and you're just trying to correct yourself here, correct yourself. You don't have to go back to Tkiyah. Okay, if you make a mistake in the Tkiyahs that come after davening, which the Rabbi does it from the stender after Aleinu, no problem because it's only a minute. Okay, so the Iker Halachos to remember is Iker Halachos. Who makes a bracha is best a man. The person listening should make the bracha, unless the person Pashat can't, or in a hospital, the guy can't speak or nicht. But a man shouldn't make a bracha for a woman. If the man wasn't yotza, if the man was already yotza, then he shouldn't make a bracha for a woman, unless he's not being yotza. So if there's a crowd of men and women, you can have a man do the bracha. That's the first thing. The person blowing should be standing. And then make sure your shofar is kosher. Don't put anything between your mouth and the shofar. No fingers, anything like that. Make sure there are cracks. If there's cracks, ask a shayla because there's different situations. What else did we cover? Then there is.
There's only ladies there. She can make the bracha.
Then the lady can make a bracha. Yeah. Then she makes the bracha if there's only ladies. Then what else did we cover? Then there is. Make sure to take a breath between every single item you blow. Right. And if you make a mistake, basically in every single case, you're doing tkiyas over again. If you make a mistake, unless you didn't take a breath between shvarim and trua in tashrat, and you missed a shvarim or something, you missed a shever, or if you couldn't get a sound out, it's not considered a mistake. You're just trying to get the sound out. But once you've got it out, you can't redo it, because then you're making a hefsek. Once you got 3 shvarim out and you start doing it again, or actually another example is if you did this is where it actually does come into your case. If you do 3 truas, 2, just 3 truas, and now you ran out of breath, according to the first opinion, you already yotze trua, and anything you do now is going to be a hefsek. In that case, you have to go back to the beginning of tkiyah.
Make sure you're
Yeah, because if you did, Because if you only did 2 truas, you didn't do it through a b'chlal, and you're just correcting yourself. But if you already did 3 truas, and according to one opinion, you're yotzeh trua, you have to go back to tekiah. Right? That's why it all comes down to: are you making a hefsek in what you're doing now between the trua of the Torah and the tekiah that comes before or after? Review it again. You should review it again before Rosh
You don't have
Hashanah.
to go back to the tekiah.
If what?
Only if you make what's called a hefsek.
That's right. But if you did 3 truas, according to one opinion, you're yotzeh trua, which means anything you do after now is going to be a hefsek. Even though we want to do 9 truas. Which means it means if you want to do 9 truas, you have to go back to tekiah to do your 9 truas. Because otherwise, anything you're doing now is a hefsek between that one opinion of trua. Sorry?
You took a breath after
You
3.
stop, yeah.
Sorry.
Let's say you're in the middle of the shore, like you said, we did 2, and then
Trying to
you're doing it over. You don't have to go back to
No.
tekiah.
No, because you weren't. In other words, only after you've done what you're supposed to do in that set, and you start doing other things, now it becomes a hefsek. Or if you didn't start to do what you're supposed to do in that set, and you start doing other things, then it's a hefsek. Right? But if you didn't do what you're supposed to, you're trying to correct yourself.
Still no trying to get it out.
And you're still trying to get it out. There's no correction to be made. So in most cases, you're going back to the beginning of tekiah. You're right, unless you did 3 truos already.
You're going back to the tekiah, you have to go back to the tekiah.
No, even in that case, you go back to
You
tekiah.
did 3 truths because you were yatzing up towards 1.
That's right.
That's the thing, but
Even if you're trying to catch your breath.
Go back to tekiah,
Yeah.
just go back
Yeah,
to
but this is
the
not. What I'm saying is, in this case, you didn't make a mistake. You just ran out of breath after 4 truas. So if you ran out of breath after 2 shvarim, just redo 3 shvarim. But if you ran out of breath 4 truas in, you can't just redo your truas because that would be a hefsek according to the opinion which said that 4 truas were yotzeh. So you have to go to tekiah again. Okay, we should chazir these halachos and get them well. And Mezir Hashem, I'm going to have. I'll reach out to all of you about which parks you want to take and what times they are. Shikar, have a good night.
Thank you.